From federal Conservatives rallying the troops in our province to weighing the impact of market mayhem, and the Alberta government's continued push for a change in policing. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Mount Royal University political scientist Laurie Williams and Barry Morishita, former leader of the Alberta Party and a former mayor of Brooks. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with Pierre Poilievre bringing the campaign to our province. And it was former Prime Minister Stephen Harper who introduced the Conservative leader to a massive Canada First rally in a warehouse south of Edmonton. The crowd pegged at anywhere from 10 to 15,000, and Poilievre made several promises to party supporters.
A new Conservative government that will axe taxes, build homes, unleash our resources, and bring home our jobs so we can stand up to the Americans with strength for a change.
Meanwhile, Liberal leader Mark Carney will make his way to Alberta from the West Coast today for an event in Calgary this evening, and the NDP's Jagmeet Singh brings his campaign to BC. Laurie, I'll start with you. Many are saying this is the largest rally for any party so far. How big a boost is this for the Conservative campaign? Put wind in Pierre Poilievre's sails.
Well, we've been seeing the pretty large crowds at a lot of his rallies. It speaks to the enthusiasm of supporters, the base of the Conservative Party, their organizational ability, their ground game, if you like. And of course, in Alberta, you'd expect a larger crowd to be brought out because in many ridings in Alberta, they're won by large margins, 60, 70%, or even more in some cases. It's good news, suggests maybe momentum is moving in the right direction for Pierre Poilievre. And of course, it looks great in videos and suggests that support is growing. On the other hand, it's entirely possible that people seeing those crowds, perhaps people that are still thinking of voting for the NDP, Greens, the Bloc or whatever, see those crowds and are motivated to stop the Conservatives and to vote Liberal instead. So it's a really complex dynamic.
Well, and Barry, an obvious sign of massive support for Conservatives right here in our province, but what kind of signal do you see this sending the rest of the country?
Well, I think that's the question. I believe that the Premier is running at odds with Pierre Poilievre's campaign, and no matter how many people show up to a rally south of Edmonton, that is not going to change his fortunes in the seat-rich areas of Southern Ontario, British Columbia, even Atlantic Canada, where they had so many gains earlier and have lost them all. It's not going to make a difference. If anything, it's going to, reiterate that Poilievre's base is in Alberta, and that they believe that aligning with the Americans on a number of issues is better, and that's the narrative that the Liberals are talking about. It's serving them well, and I don't think pictures of this rally broadcast any other part of the country is going to help Poilievre shake that image.
Laurie, how important is the endorsement of former PM Stephen Harper? What does that bring to the equation?
Well, it's significant for two reasons. One, he hasn't supported the last two leaders in previous elections. And I think, a line that's going to be played, probably put in Conservative ads, is that Stephen Harper is saying both of these men worked for me. And he is saying that Pierre Poilievre is the better person for the job. So, again, that's going to resonate with people who respect Stephen Harper, who want to go back to the days of the Harper government. I'm not sure it's going to carry as much weight with people that are on the fence, but it's certainly a boost for people that are open to the support and the endorsement of Stephen Harper.
Barry, according to the latest polling, Liberals and Conservatives, they're edging closer to one another in popular support, with Liberals slipping a bit, the Conservatives gaining a bit. What do you chalk that shifting element up to?
Well, again, I think we have to be careful not to put too much kind of credence in the polls on a daily or weekly basis. I think it does speak to the fact that if Mark Carney wants to be successful, he has to continue to press a change agenda. He has to continue to be Captain Canada, so to speak, in light of what's happening with President Trump. And I think for Pierre Poilievre, the secret is that if he can somehow take an endorsement like Stephen Harper's and allay some of the fears that people have about his ability to lead Canada over the next couple of weeks. It could be a tight race. A lot happens in 2 weeks in a federal election campaign, particularly with all of the things going on around the world and trade and an unpredictable president south of us.
Well, and on that tariff front, we heard from economist Moshe Lander off the top, reflecting on markets' impact. Laurie, is this still the dominant issue most likely to determine the outcome of the federal election?
Depends on who you talk to and who comes out to vote. So it's quite clear from the Conservative campaign that they're appealing to folks very much on the basis that they did to win their support and to increase their share of the polls up until the resignation of Justin Trudeau and the election of Donald Trump south of the border. They're counting on people who are looking for change, who are concerned about the issues that they're listing to come out and support them. By contrast, the Liberals are campaigning to people who want perhaps a different kind of change, more stable or safe change, and they're counting on their people coming out to support them. So which leader you support may well depend on what you think is the defining issue. And there seems to be a division amongst Canadians as to what's most important and which leader represents the kind of change that they want.
And Barry, to squeeze one last in and reflecting on what we heard from Moshe Lander, where Alberta is concerned, oil prices falling, markets fluctuating. At what point do you see panic setting in for the provincial government?
Well, I think it is early. I think the fact that oil prices are as low as they are to begin the fiscal year is certainly going to be a long-term concern for Albertans, but it is kind of every cycle. I think one of the things you're going to see is how the provincial government is going to steer the messaging away, put others to blame, as they have set themselves up now, that the federal government is always to blame for all of the problems in Alberta. You're going to continue to see that narrative because their political survival, quite frankly, I think depends on it.
All right. We need to jump to a break real quick, but when we come back, the Smith government makes further moves toward creation of a new police agency. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. The Smith government is moving forward with legislation to create a new independent police service.
I am giving those options to municipalities, and if a municipality wishes to choose an option other than their current contract service provider, that choice is available to them.
The new police agency would be run at arm's length from government as a provincial crown corporation and absorb some duties currently held by Alberta sheriffs. The minister says 35 municipalities are currently exploring a transition to a provincial police service, but adds the RCMP will remain Alberta's official force, at least for now. Barry, I'll start with you first this time. As a former mayor, former head of Alberta municipalities, what does this move signify to you?
Well, it's been a long-held belief that the UCP has wanted a separate police force away from Ottawa and the RCMP. As you know, municipalities have long stood with the RCMP as a preferred force. There are lots of moving parts here. I think the cost is a big issue for municipalities as they move forward. The arm's length idea about who's actually going to be in charge of this police group is another issue. But I think at the end of the day, it's an inefficient use of rare resources right now. Things aren't going well in terms of budgeting, and it kind of flies in the face of what municipalities really need from the provincial government right now.
Laurie, no timeline offered by the government or anything around potential costs involved. But is this the sign that the days are numbered for the RCMP in its current capacity in Alberta?
I think that's an open question. Clearly, there are changes coming from the Ottawa side of this in terms of how they're trying to reorganize delivery of policing, particularly in smaller centers and rural areas. But in addition to the cost question and just the political question of whether the government is listening to the municipalities that are going to be affected by this, I think there are a lot of folks in rural Alberta that are wondering why the government that they're so strong on supporting is not listening on this and a number of issues that are important to them. There's also a real question about connecting, coordinating with national security services and dealing with international threats and issues, which are increasingly becoming a factor to be considered. So there's certainly room to move in the direction of better law enforcement, more responsiveness to the concerns about crime and safety that exist in communities. But it's got to be done in a way that's responsive to the folks that are actually receiving the services. And it also has to be very well coordinated with national and international policing systems so it can be effective.
Barry, to your point earlier, municipalities, urban and rural, have long pushed back against ditching the RCMP. But the minister indicated on Monday there are 35 communities looking at a shift in policing model. How much of a potential shift do you see coming in that regard?
Well, I think it does come down to value and what municipalities are looking for. I think one of the reasons, Lori made a really good point about how this is kind of an uncoordinated effort. I can tell you that municipalities are a lot at risk when it comes to either, very serious crime or crime issues or resources that go well beyond what a local police force can handle. None of those questions have ever been answered to the satisfaction of municipalities. So while there are certainly, I know a lot of municipalities have taken the grant money and are studying to look at options, I think that's prudent for them to do so. I think the more important question is this coordination, the lack of coordination. What is the actual goal here? If you remember right when the panel that former Premier Kenney set up, this was just one of those things that Alberta should have because Ontario had one, Quebec had one, so Alberta should have one. That'll set us apart from Ottawa. It was born from an ideology and from a statement piece that Alberta likes to take on Ottawa, but I don't think it's been well thought out, and that could be very critically disastrous for some municipalities in the future.
All right. For us, one more topic. That is the Smith government shift from an acute care funding model to one that pays hospitals based on the number of procedures provided.
We're creating the conditions for every administrator to figure out how to use the resources that they have to better use and be able to get rewarded with more dollars coming to the facility as a result.
They are more focused on what they like to call competition than they are on actually making sure people get good health care. The
government says the change will standardize costs while incentivizing hospitals to be more efficient in providing acute care. Critics call it a step towards a two-tier system, and providers will prioritize faster treatments in order to get more people out the door. Lori, is this strictly about performance and the provision of surgeries? What do you see this change representing where delivery of services is concerned?
Well, I think a lot of people applaud the idea of using scarce tax dollars wisely and efficiently. But this isn't just about, sort of standard widgets that you're putting through a factory. The reality is that in order to be efficient, that will lead many facilities and surgeons to choose patients that can be dealt with more simply, more efficiently, more quickly. In other words, wealthier, healthier folks will be preferred in these kinds of facilities because they make their efficiency numbers look better. And that's going to have an impact on people that have more complex healthcare needs, whose complexity, whose health issues are going to make it more difficult to deal with them in an efficient manner. And it could actually diminish both the availability and quality of care to those who have more complex needs.
Barry, how do you see this new funding model and the push toward competition changing Alberta's healthcare dynamic?
Well, I don't agree that competition is the way to go, and we are trying to, it seems like, create a factory mentality when it comes to operations. So the more you put through, as Lori alluded to, then the better off you are, the more money you'll get. And quite frankly, the fact is healthcare is a very personal, it's a very unique thing. And I think one of the problems that hasn't been addressed here is that we're still leaving health decisions and operational decisions in the hand of an administrator who looks at a black and white balance sheet or ledger and says, we need to do this, we need to do that. And I think it's just the wrong way to go. I think the idea of delivering resources to hospitals in a much more, in a different way than the old budgeted process certainly needs to be looked at. But I think creating a competition will, again, not serve the overall health needs of Albertans. And I don't see this ending well. Certainly don't see it being cheaper.
Laurie, critics say this is the gateway to privatization. But what will you be watching for now on the public health care front as the system-wide overhaul further evolves?
I think, again, the reason that people are concerned about basically impoverishing the public healthcare system is that if healthcare professionals can make more money, get better hours, pick their patients and so forth by going to a private facility or one of these chartered surgical facilities, then it creates a different kind of access, a different quality of healthcare to patients who fit this model, the ones who are easier or more efficient to process, who can be brought into a hospital, perhaps even on an outpatient basis, or staying in hospital for a very short period of time and discharged and look like they're actually getting more surgeries done for less money. And then it becomes more difficult for folks with either more complex healthcare needs, those who cannot access these facilities, more difficult for them to get the quality of care that those who fit into that more efficient throughput model, they're going to get lower quality care than the folks that are going through that system. Again, these ideas of competition, trying to get efficiency and so forth, there are limits to how those work in a human context where there are complexities. Again, we're not dealing with a one-size-fits-all. There has to be the possibility of responding to the complex health needs of those who are most vulnerable, and there has to be an incentive to providing care for those complex patients.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly for this.
Thanks, Michael.